Ahlan wa sahlan مرة ثانية. I am happy to welcome you back for another lesson on something different. Today we're going to talk about abstract nouns, as you see here, and this is not something that is really based on any of the measures that we do, but it's a different type of word. So let's jump right to it. This shall be a fairly easy and simple lesson, but will be useful to you. So to review, as you remember, we can form an adjective from a noun by simply adding the ending E. And this is what we call the nisba adjective, if you remember that. But you learned this way back when, particularly when you first started doing nationalities. So we know we have these three nouns, for example, Masr, Ilm, and Al-Islam. So Masr becomes Masri, Egypt, Egyptian. Ilm becomes Ilmi, science, scientific. Al-Islam, Islami, becomes Islamic. Okay? Pretty easy, right? So you learned how to do this. This was fabulous. Now we're going to learn the next step from this. From this adjective, this nisba, we can now form another noun related to the adjective. Now you say that's crazy. We went from noun to adjective, and now we're going to go back to noun. Well, let's give an example of how this works in English so you'll understand. Okay, here is one example. We have England, which is a noun. It's a place. From this, we get the adjective English. This is a nisba adjective, just like Masri. Now, from the word English, we can form another noun, Englishness. Right? It's the noun, the state of being this, or the degree of being this, the amount that you are of this. Notice these are both nouns, but they're not the same thing, and you can clearly see how there's a progression in these words, right? They're getting more abstract. So this is what we call an abstract noun, Englishness. Now, in English, these words are often ended with ism, ology, ness, ity, like charity, right? Or, fertility or something like that. And there's many other endings in English because these all come from different languages in origin. In Arabic, we simply use the suffix iya, which is basically the feminine nisba from the adjective form. And we use that to mean all of these things. So just like everything else, it's a simpler version in English. So let's take an example of this. Fairly simple. Okay, we have Al-Islam, which of course is Islam. We get the word Islami, which is, Islamic. And from this, we get the word Islamiyah, which is, popular in political writings today that means Islamism. But you notice how the word Islamism is not the same as Islam at all. This word is, for the most part, an insult, a pejorative when used that way. It's the sense of someone, stressing, emphasizing this. Islamiyah. Okay? So that's one example. Let's look at another one. Now this one you should be able to figure this out right away. Arab, of course, Arab. We get Arabi. We've seen this word all over the place. And the word Al-Arabiya. Al-Arabiya, which we would call Arabism. And so this is like as a political ideology, the idea of pan-Arabism. Stressing this. And this is often what these words are used for, is political and ideological concepts, many of which are being borrowed from the West. Al-Arabiya, like for example, Watan is nation, Wataniya, nationalism, and so forth. So that's where a lot of these come from. Now, of course, this looks the same as the feminine of the nisba, so you have to use context to tell what they're talking about. The other thing is, although we're showing these as indefinite, these type of nouns are usually going to be definite. We talk about al-Arabiya. Yani, it means, we would say Arabism, but they're saying the Arabism. Okay, let's look at yet another example. Some of these words you may recognize. Salib. Salib is a cross. Like a salib al-ahmar is the red cross. Now we get this word, salibiyya. Now this it may take you a while to think of what this word means, unless you know the origin of the word crusader. Crusader, cru comes from cross, and so that's what that means. So salib we get salibi, which means a crusader, which is it's a very negative term that talks about the Crusades, al-haruba salibiyya. And then from that we get we derive the adjective salibi, because this adjective really doesn't have any meaning until crusader comes into being. Okay, so you can see that's an example of it. Now this is not one, you wouldn't guess it right away, but when you hear what it means, aha, it makes sense. Okay, do we have more examples? Ooh, maybe we do. Here's another word. And as you can guess, all these words we're seeing so far, are all fairly political, hot topics that you'll find in history and politics. Well, we look at this word. What could this mean? Well, you may remember the word asl. Asl is origin. We say, mungkin Buddy Valastro, huwa Amriki min asl Itali. He's an American of Italian origin. Usul means origins. Now, specifically in Islam, usul, we talk about usul al-fiqh, usul al-din, the fundamentals of the religion. We talk about the Quran, the Hadith, and so forth. So we get this term usuliyya, and again, it's usually going to be definite. Al-usuliyya. Well, if you think about it for a second, what are they talking about? An usuli is a fundamentalist. Usul is the origins, the fundamentals. Someone who is usuli is fundamentalist, and usuliya is fundamentalism. And again, this is a negative word generally when it's being used. But it's important to see that most of these words, like usuliya, salibiyya, most of these words that we're seeing were brought in foreign terms, and they had to come up with an Arabic way of expressing them. So that's why we have words like these. Okay, now, if that's fun, here we have an example. Here are 4 Arabic words. These are all nouns of, some of them may be familiar to you, some may not be, but it's pretty easy to see what's going to happen if we put this ending onto these words. You can easily imagine what we're going to end up with. So let's see. Okay, so we have Ansar is it's like a race, a breed, an ethnicity. Irhab is a word for extreme fear or terror. Ishtirak means collaboration, cooperation, sharing, and shakhs, you all know that word. So, look what happens. Ansuriya becomes, of course, racism. Again, it's a bad term. Irhabiyya, this is probably the most popular of all these terms today. Irhabiyya, terror, terrorist, terrorism. Okay, and Irhabi is a terrorist. Again, this is a very negative term. Ishtirakiyya, you may not think of it, but this is socialism. And primarily the reason this becomes the translation for socialism, because we have the word, ijtima ijtima'i is social. But we have to distinguish social, like social psychology, versus this, socialism. So, al-ishtirakiyya. We have that, sort of an outdated term today. And then something like shakhs. Shakhsiya is your personality. Right? Think of it. A shakhs is a person. That is a concrete, tangible noun. Shakhsi, personally. Shakhsiya, personality, we get this abstract concept from. So a lot of them are like this. When you see this ending, if you recognize the root and can guess what the root means, you can figure out it's the abstract version of this. You know the word shakhs is a person. Shakhsiya, well, personality. Okay, now, isn't that great? Now you probably can guess what every one of these words means. Many of these types of abstract words are brought directly into Arabic, and they don't have the noun form existing. They're not derived from Arabic nouns and then Arabic nisba adjectives. They're just imported wholesale. But if we have to import something that ends with an ism, an ology, this is typically going to be the ending we'll use. So you can figure out what every one of these words means. Obviously, demokratia is democracy. Well, this is not a base word that we got this from. We brought in this word, but we use this ending, demokratia. Someone who is democratic is demokrati, or a democrat. Right? Biologia. There are a lot of like academic subjects and disciplines that have this ending. Now this one in the English, it's fairly close, biology, but we have biologia. But it could be something something different that ends in an ism, or in this case, this ends with a Y, democracy. Let's see if we can guess this one. Right, dictatoria. Dictatoria, we get the word dictator from this. But obviously this is not an Arabic word that it's based on. And this last one, right, fascia. It's the import of fascism. So a fasci is a fascist, but there's no base noun of fash that this comes from. Okay, so all right, we're almost done. Can you believe it? That's a quickie. Now, last point we want to make is we've talked about the noun form of this, like irhabiya, ishtirakiya, and so forth. Well, if we go back to the nisba adjective form, then we have either the adjective or the active participle, someone who is this. So irhabiya, terrorism. Irhabi is terrorist, like a terrorist group, a terrorist act, or someone who's called an irhabi, yani he is a terrorist. An ishtiraki is a socialist, or is something that is socialist. And an usuli is something that is fundamentalist. So usuli can be a person, or we could have maybe like a kitab usuli, a fundamentalist book, afkar usuliya, right? Fundamentalist ideas. And that's pretty much what you need to know. This is a very valuable pattern to know because so many of these words, as you can see, are used in the news, are used in political discussions and in history. And if you're going to be at that advanced level, which you all want to be, you will need to learn these words. So go do the exercises, practice these, and become proficient. So on behalf of my good friend Soki, who is not an irhabiya or an ishtirakiya at all, she's a great dog, we want to wish you all the best, and we'll see you in our next lesson, inshallah.